In the early hours of January 27th, a tragedy began unfolding inside the Stouch home, though no one outside that house would know the full horror for weeks. To the outside world, Letitia Stouch looked like a worried stepmother trying to manage a difficult morning. She sent messages to her supervisor saying she could not come to work. At first, she claimed a family emergency involving her stepfather. Later, she said her 11-year-old stepson, Gannon, was sick and needed to stay home. Nothing about those excuses seemed dramatic yet. But before long, investigators would learn that the truth was already hiding in plain sight. A neighbor's surveillance camera captured Letitia and Gannon leaving home at 10:16 a.m. in the family truck. That detail mattered more than anyone realized at the time. Instead of heading to a doctor, Letitia stopped at Petco. By 2:00 p.m., they had returned home. But something about that return stood out immediately to family and friends. Letitia backed the truck all the way into the driveway, which was unusual for her. Later, investigators would suspect that the truck bed may have been concealing blood or other evidence. By 7:00 p.m., Letitia made the call that would launch the investigation. She reported Gannon missing, saying he had gone to a friend's house and never came home. That story did not hold up for long. When officers arrived, Letitia seemed calm in a way that made them uneasy. A mother with a missing child would normally be frantic, but Letitia's behavior felt controlled, almost rehearsed. She repeated that Gannon had gone to a friend's house, yet that was quickly disproven. She also tried to keep officers focused on only certain parts of the home, especially the living room and Gannon's room, while steering them away from other areas. One of the places she seemed most intent on avoiding was the basement. That alone was enough to raise suspicion, but the real picture was still much darker than anyone imagined. As officers continued searching, Letitia's answers became stranger. She spoke about clothes, jackets, and minor details in a way that felt oddly defensive. She mentioned a cut-up section of carpet in the basement, as though she was trying to explain it before anyone even asked. The more she talked, the more obvious it became that she was not simply confused. She was managing a story. The first real crack in that story came from a video recorded on January 26th, the day before Gannon was reported missing. In it, Letitia discussed a burn mark in the carpet after Gannon had reportedly dropped a candle. At first, it sounded like a simple accident, but the footage showed something more troubling. Gannon had burn injuries on his arms, and Letitia appeared far more irritated than concerned. Rather than rushing him for medical attention, she scolded him. That reaction would later become one of the most disturbing details in the case, because it suggested she was more worried about consequences than her son's pain. When detectives reviewed her phone calls and interviews, the contradictions only got worse. Letitia told one version of the candle incident to her husband Albert, and a different version to investigators. In one account, the burns were minor. In another, she described them as bubbling and painful. She said she used aloe and assumed the injuries would heal, but her own words kept shifting, and each new version seemed designed to make the situation look less serious than it really was. By the time officers realized how much she had changed her story, they already knew they were dealing with more than a worried parent. Then came the search history. A forensic examination of Letitia's phone uncovered disturbing searches from the days surrounding Gannon's disappearance. She had looked up things related to blood, arterial bleeding, how to clean blood out of sheets, and what to do if someone swallowed poison. She also searched about divorce, finding a new husband, and even, "I want immunity." Letitia tried to explain each one away. She claimed some were about nosebleeds or random things she saw online. But the timing was impossible to ignore. The searches lined up too closely with the injuries, the cleanup, and the period when Gannon vanished. The investigators were now looking at a different kind of story. Not a child missing from home, but a crime scene carefully disguised to look accidental. As detectives pressed harder, Letitia's explanations became even more dramatic. She claimed an intruder had entered the home, attacked her, demanded a suitcase, and somehow caused the chaos inside. She said she had been hit on the head and blacked out. But there was one major problem. Surveillance footage showed no one entering or leaving the house after Letitia and Gannon got home. No burglar, no stranger, no violent intruder. Just Letitia, and then silence. The physical evidence inside the house also told a different story. Investigators found blood in the truck bed, in Gannon's room, and across parts of the home. The burned carpet in the basement was not an isolated accident. It was tied to a larger scene that had been cleaned, altered, and hidden. The blood patterns suggested the injuries were severe, and the location of the stains indicated more than one area of the home had been involved. Police believed Gannon had likely been attacked inside the house, possibly while in bed, and then moved as someone tried to cover up what had happened. Then came another detail that made the timing even more suspicious. On the evening Gannon disappeared, Letitia sent her daughter Harley to buy cleaning supplies from Dollar Tree: baking soda, vinegar, trash bags, carpet powder. Those are the kinds of things people buy to remove odor, wipe stains, and dispose of evidence. The purchase looked far less like ordinary housekeeping and far more like damage control after a violent act. The timeline began tightening around her. Gannon returned home on January 27th. Somewhere after that, something terrible happened. A doorbell camera later captured audio that suggested Gannon may have been screaming, with neighborhood dogs reacting to the noise. Then almost immediately after, Letitia started cleaning, moving, and rearranging the scene. By the next day, she had rented a Kia Rio and driven nearly 1,000 miles in a single day. That mileage made no sense for a simple errand or emotional getaway. It suggested she was moving something, hiding something, or trying to get far away from the truth as fast as possible. When federal investigators interviewed Letitia again, they no longer treated her as a confused stepmother. They treated her as the person most likely responsible for Gannon's death. By then, she had already told too many inconsistent versions of the same story. She claimed love for her children and denied having any motive, but even that answer rang hollow. She talked about feeling unsupported by Albert, about resentment, about frustrations in the marriage, and about conflicts involving Gannon's biological mother. Yet none of those explanations accounted for the blood, the injuries, the search history, or the hidden body. Eventually, the evidence became impossible to deny. Nearly 7 weeks after Gannon disappeared, a maintenance worker found a suitcase under a bridge in Florida. Inside was Gannon's body. The autopsy revealed something devastating. He had been given acetaminophen and hydrocodone, but the hydrocodone was not prescribed to him. It belonged to Albert, and Letitia was the only one who knew where it was kept. That strongly suggested he had been drugged. The autopsy also showed a gunshot wound to the jaw, confirming that this was not a fire accident, not a disappearance, and not a misunderstanding. Gannon had been murdered. By then, Letitia had already exposed herself through her own words. She had lied about the timeline, lied about the fire, lied about the intruder, and lied about where Gannon had gone. She had searched for ways to explain blood, damage, legal consequences, and even how to protect herself. Piece by piece, she had tried to build a story that would survive police scrutiny. But every lie made the truth more obvious. What makes this case so disturbing is not only the violence itself, but the way the violence was hidden. A child was reported missing while his body was already concealed. A mother kept talking, kept explaining, kept adjusting her story, while officers stood in a house that still held the evidence of what she had done. The truth was there the entire time, buried beneath carpet, blood, and lies. In the end, the tragedy of Gannon's death is not just that he was killed. It is that the person responsible spent days pretending to look for him. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel to continue receiving videos like this. Thanks for watching.